first hear that, I think of drum sets being thrown down the stairs or something. Not that it
Piano
sounds
being
like
thrown down the
crap or
stairs.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Dan and Janice here on our monthly series, Drumming Injury Talk on Drum Talk TV. And it's not just for drummers, it's for, and not just musicians either. However, Janice being a physical therapist who only works with musicians, me being a drummer and musician who does have injuries from time to time. We were just talking about one. It's also for people who, whatever instrument you play, you're at risk for getting repetitive motion injuries, but also, any kind of factory worker, delivery person, construction. I don't know if there's a job that is not at risk of repetitive even a stay-at-home mom, that repetitive motion, bending over to put the DVD in for the kids, like eventually you're back.
DVD? What era are we in these days?
Yeah, right. What am I saying? So
We might as well
Janice,
go with like VHS.
or this thing, right? The 8mm
Oh yeah.
projector my dad got when I was born to make family
That's
videos.
cool.
The
That's
thing
so
still
cool.
works too. How about
That's
that?
amazing.
Yeah, I have those old pictures. Anyhow, videos, films, whatever. So on our last episode, we touched on the core while we were talking about sciatica and lower back pain, and we
Yeah.
thought, let's talk about the core next week. We've been doing this together a couple years, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, and we
Definitely over a
never,
year.
yeah, and we
Yeah.
never
Yeah,
covered
time
the
goes
core.
fast.
It
Is
does.
that right? We've never talked about the core?
No, not really. We may have mentioned it as part of a thing, but we never focused on like, here's the core and here's what can
Yeah.
happen,
Got it. Huh.
So we
Okay.
could
Well,
talk about,
here it is.
yeah, core injury prevention and recovery and strengthening and
Yeah,
you work with a lot of drummers and
do.
percussionists and of course people who play other instruments, orchestral instruments and things like that.
Yeah.
What are the common things in drummers and percussionists that do affect their core? And I'll ask again. I ask this a lot, folks. If you watch and pay it, you may hear me say this. Like, is it posture related? Is this one of those things that's either posture related, or sometimes I'll ask the question if some of these injuries that we talk about could be not just from repetitive motion, but being out of shape, overweight, not hydrating. What causes a core injury in drummers that you find?
I mean, that could be all of those
Hmm.
things, including hydration, which we could talk about in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, like core is kind of like this thing that everyone knows, but no one really knows that much about. Like everyone spends a lot of time like working at the core. I'm gonna do a core workout, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. But
Do they know what
really,
they're doing?
yeah, I mean, not to say that those people aren't working at the core, but are you working at the core in the way that you use it from a
Oh,
day-to-day perspective, right? Because,
right.
like, so when we talk about the core, we're mostly talking about our trunk, and then mostly talking about kind of like from, in a sense, from like where like the rib cage ends to like the pelvic floor. So if you think about usually when you hear PTs talk about the core, most people think about abs, right? Abs, abs, abs all day. That's the core.
Right.
In reality,
And it's not even part of the core, right? It
it is. It actually
is?
is.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you, in reality, you have your abs, right? And you have different layers of abs. You have at least like three, think about this, three, if not four layers of abs. And then you have your back muscles. So that's kind of like the front and the back.
Okay.
Your abs also go around like circumferentially around your torso.
Mhm.
But then you also have the top and the bottom. You have your diaphragm that
I was
sits
thinking of
underneath your rib
pecs.
cage.
When you said abs, that's why I said they're not
Oh,
included. I was thinking of pec because you said from the bottom of the rib cage down. Okay, got it.
oh yeah,
Got
yeah,
my
yeah. No,
anatomy
no, your
straight.
abs,
Yeah.
your abs. So then you have your diaphragm that sits underneath your rib cage, kind of like here, and
Right.
then you have your pelvic floor. So you actually have this like 360 encapsulation, and that constitutes or that makes up kind of our definition of the core.
Okay.
So, do you know why the core is important? That's a
I would
$1,000,000
think
question.
I
What's your
think
thought?
it keeps us upright
Yeah,
and is the center of balance.
yeah,
Okay.
sure.
And it's
Um,
where all our digestive most of our digestive system is liver, pancreas, kidneys,
yeah, all our organs are kind of live
and
in the core as well.
it's got to be the major flow of all our fluids, the blood flow to and from the heart passes through the
Yeah, I
core.
mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens in
Yeah.
that area,
You're like the
right?
main engine of our body really also and framework, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in there. If we're talking about just kind of like from a movement perspective or just like mechanics, the core, the reason why the core is important, and you kind of hit on this, is the core is kind of where our center of mass lives. And so like where the weight of our body going down and the resistance of our weight coming back up from the ground actually lives right around our belly button area. So that's an area
Oh,
where we really do need to be like very solid and have a good foundation.
because it has the least amount of bone support. You've only got what, like this much, depending on how tall you are, but like that much spine from the bottom of the rib cage to your pelvis, and the rest is all organs and flesh and all of that.
Totally, totally. And
Yeah.
that's what allows us to have a lot of movement as well, right? Imagine if we had rib cage going all the way down to our pelvis, like we wouldn't be able to
Be real stiff. Yeah.
twist. Yeah, I mean, we would have some movement, but maybe not as much as what we do.
R2D2, I mean, CP3O is built like
Yeah,
that. Well,
right.
R2D2 as well.
Or both of them, both of
And
them.
the Tin Man.
Yeah. Well, so having a good core is not just important when we're in good posture. Having a strong core allows us to be able to move out of that neutral
Mm,
posture and still be supported where you're not putting too much stress on one area or another.
interesting.
So, I think we've talked about posture quite a few times
Yeah.
in our chats, kind of like here and there. And I can't remember if we had like an actual like session on just posture alone, but basically posture is everyone thinks about, oh, I have to have good posture and have to be in this straight line. But that's not how we live our lives, right? We're
Right.
always going to be moving in and out of that position.
Yeah.
And so making sure that your body is able to withstand, kind of those demands when you start to deviate out of that centered position is actually where the core comes into play even more importantly, not just when you're in this kind of like neutral, upright, lined up position.
Interesting. Can you pull the core up on your program and
Yeah,
show the areas that either are more susceptible or are the more common areas that get affected
yeah.
that you
Give me
see in drummers
one.
specifically?
Yeah, so one thing that I see a lot with drummers, oops, sorry, wrong button.
Where'd she go?
Uh,
Check this out, folks. If you haven't seen Janice's demonstrative 3D program of the human body, it's great.
there we go. You see it?
Yeah. There we go.
There we go. All right, so let me just zoom out. So this is just so I've taken away most of the muscles on on this person's right side. Um, so when we're talking about the core, actually, let me do this. Let me just add everything back in so we can see what we're talking about. Okay, so we're talking about our core. So we have different levels, layers of muscles, right? So we have, our abs, six pack. And then if we take this away, then we have the obliques here underneath
Mhm.
that. Then we have this muscle here. This is another oblique. And then we have this really deep muscle here. And you have it on both sides. And this is kind of that corset that I was talking about. This is called the
Mhm.
transverse abdominis.
Yeah.
And so it's like more of this deep muscle that, a lot of PTs care a lot about because basically, I kind of described the boundaries of the core. So like the diaphragm, the pelvic floor, if you look down here, pelvic floor.
Oh,
So the
yeah.
diaph Yeah, so you got the top and the bottom. You think about a Coke can. The Coke can is like a pressurized system, right? And so
Right.
if you have weakness in any point of the wall, either above or below or around the side, then pressure is going to go path of least resistance,
Yeah.
right? And so when we talk about the core, it's kind of that same concept where all of these muscles, so your diaphragm, this is where your diaphragm is. So it kind of lives underneath the rib cage. You see that? Oops.
Yeah.
Here is this big umbrella shaped muscle, this dome shaped muscle. And so when we breathe in, the diaphragm actually goes downwards, it flattens out. And then when we exhale, it comes back up towards the rib cage.
And that's what pumps our lungs, right?
That's what brings in air into our lungs. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Now, what's interesting is that as we breathe, our diaphragm goes down. As we breathe in, our diaphragm goes down. What actually happens is our pelvic floor also goes down too. So they actually
Mm.
move in parallel. And so that kind of keeps kind of a constant pressure, at least from the top and the bottom,
Mhm.
within our abdomen here. And then we have our abs here. So we have this muscle. So when it contracts, you imagine like a corset, like those like 1600
Yeah.
corset, you like pull the string, everything shoop, like sucks
Yeah.
in. So that kind of gives you that circumferential pressure as well as the abs in the front, and then a bunch of the muscles, not this one, but lots of stuff happening. Hang on. So like these muscles here, your back muscles also are part of the core too. So you got front, back, all around, and all of those muscles working together help maintain pressure within the abdominal cavity,
Mhm.
kind of constant pressure. And that pressure pushes, let me take this guy away. That pressure pushes backwards towards the spine. So actually, that pressure pushes up against the spine and helps stabilize the spine a little bit, in addition to all the organs that we have going on
Yeah.
in there.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about when I talk about the core. Now, when in drummers, a lot of times what I see is that because drummers sit when they play,
Right.
and how high they sit or not, kind of varies. Um, but most people are sitting on a throne. Most people are pedaling either with like probably with both feet, right? And so that's actually going to take away some stability that you're going to get through your pelvis, in which case you're going to have to depend even more on your core to
Mm.
function well and help stabilize your body while you're playing.
Right.
Um, and so oftentimes, a lot of drummers have very strong cores. So I'm not saying that all drummers have weak cores or whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, but it could be that you have a really strong core, but maybe you don't have the endurance to last a 45-minute set or an hour show or even like a 2-hour show.
Yeah.
Um, so you might start out really strong, and depending on the type of music that you're playing, it's really hard to play at like high, high, high max intensity for really long periods of time, just as it is.
Especially
Imagine,
yeah, I'm sorry, especially depending on
yeah,
not just the type of music, but the type
totally.
of setup. Like on my
Yep.
real big setup, there's twisting and turning and reaching, and that's all affecting the obliques for sure.
Totally, totally. And so how you're set up is really key too, because it's going to put more demand on one group of muscles versus the other. The
Mhm.
other thing that kind of gets overlooked often is the relationship between the pelvis and the hips and the spine. And
Mm.
so a lot of times, because drummers, we talked about this, I think, last month. A lot of drummers kind of hover on their bass
Yeah.
drum leg,
Yeah. We did, yeah.
so that's gonna use a lot of this, mostly this muscle here and this muscle here, right? But you
Pulling it up.
see,
Yeah.
yeah, this is gonna help lift the leg up.
Yeah.
But you see where this muscle attaches is on the lumbar spine itself. And
Wow.
so, the neck bone's connected to the shoulder bone, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
everything's connected. And so sometimes what I see is that people who have tight hips, um, both like being straight, but then also like bending their knee towards their chest.
Yeah,
If that's tight, that's going to cause the pelvis to move earlier or much earlier, and then which will cause the spine to move, and then you're going to be putting more pressure on the spine. So I think
interesting.
for drummers, making sure that you have really good hip mobility is actually really important, and that's something that oftentimes gets overlooked. Um, and in terms of like what you're strengthening, what you're stretching, and whatnot.
Mhm.
I might be wrong. I mean, there might be like maybe all drummers stretch their hips, but I like the ones that I've encountered, those are few and far between. So
Yeah. Yeah, on purpose, you mean,
on
right?
purpose, yeah,
Yeah. No,
exactly.
I think very few. I'll be honest with you, in 55 years of playing, I've never consciously worked on my lower body stretching before I play, and almost never have worked on my upper body, my arms or any of that. I one of those people, I just sit
Yeah,
down and play.
right,
And I'm also
right.
not that limber. Like, I can barely sit in a cross-legged position, and I'm very uncomfortable, and then I need someone to help me unfold and get up.
That's funny. I mean,
I'm
look,
not
it's not like you need to like be able to pull yourself into a pretzel or anything like that. But having good mobility, at least in like the front to back directions, like pulling your knees towards your chest and then
Yeah,
also extending your leg kind of behind your body. Those I think at least for drummers is like the a good first place to start.
okay.
Um, and then, you can kind of expand from there. When we were talking about the core also, and I know we talked about sciatica before, but
Mhm,
kind of just to review, so from the spine itself, the reason why having a good core is important is because you have all these nerves that come out of every level of the spine.
mhm.
And then those join together to make like your sciatic nerve, for example, which is this big chunky thing right here that goes down your the back of your leg and then goes into your it splits and then goes into your calf. So that's why sometimes people who have sciatica might feel it all the way down to their foot.
Yeah, I
Um,
did
so
for years.
yeah, so the more pressure that people have on their back, there can be different conditions that can cause like pinching of the nerves.
Mhm.
Um, in between each segment of the spine, you have a disc, this little green thing right here.
Right.
So this is a bone here, this is a bone here, and the disc is like this little shock absorbing pad that sits in between every segment of your spine all the way up to your neck. So it's not exclusive just to the low back. But you mentioned hydration earlier,
Yeah.
and hydration can play a key role into how how kind of bulky that disc is. Um,
Mm,
and interestingly enough, like they've measured disc height from the moment that we like wake up in the morning throughout the course of the day, and
yeah.
just with the effects of gravity through the day, we actually do shrink a little bit, just because of the compression that goes through the discs.
I think
So
I've been doing that for years and have never bounced back up in height.
right, you just
I'm
keep getting
definitely
shorter and
shorter.
shorter.
Yeah.
Well, that
Shorter my
happens as
foot
time
speed
goes
doesn't
on
work out,
too,
but
right? So a
yeah,
lot of time people will hear about like disc bulges, and so why
yeah.
that's significant is that like there might be a bulge kind of in the back portion of the disc, which will then kind of like intrude on this hole that the nerve is traveling out of. So like a disc bulge can cause sciatica
That's what
or
happened to me.
irritation of the nerve. Yeah.
Yeah, it was horrible for a very long time. I felt the effects of it. I mean, just seeing you light up that nerve, I get a flashback of what
Kind of
that
like
felt like.
PTSD a little bit.
Yeah, for years, I
Yeah.
dealt with that. But
Yeah.
so
But
what
yeah, go
oh, I'm
ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go for it.
Okay. So, if someone has a big fun kit that is, not just a four-piece kit, but like I got timpanis and the whole thing wraps around. Most
Yeah.
people who watch the show, I think they've seen me play on my big progressive kit. It's similar to like Chester Thompson, Phil Collins, Carl Palmer, that kind of stuff. And talk about how important. So we talk about core and the fact that the strength, a kit like mine, you're twisting, turning, even on a regular kit, maybe all of that. How the
Yeah.
obliques are kind of like they're susceptible, I guess it's fair to say, right? And they're strengthening. But how much does the quality of the elasticity and flexibility of your fascia come into play with that kind of protecting you from your obliques being hurt because you have good fascia? Like, I've been told I have really great fascia when I get massages, and it's because I hydrate so much. I mean, I really hydrate a lot, not just with water, but like with whiskey, with vodka. Those are good. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, folks. I'm kidding, kids. No, I drink probably 4 times a day, a drink with amino acids and electrolytes, and I
Yeah.
have about 4 shakes a day with protein powders and maca, different things, and all of that. I've got great pliable fascia. Does
Yeah.
that help keep your obliques to be less susceptible if you're doing stuff like this the whole time?
Um, Maybe. I don't know exactly the right answer to that. Most likely, I just don't have a solid
That's okay.
answer.
Otherwise, it
But
comes down to strengthening, right, and
well, I mean, it
conditioning.
comes down to strengthening, but then also flexibility, which is kind of what
Yeah,
I think you're trying to say is,
yeah,
it is very important to have good flexibility. Um, Because if you're not able, so let's say that you have your kit set up and then you're trying to reach behind. If
yeah.
you're not able to rotate from your trunk or from like your shoulder
Even reach
area,
back there,
you're
yeah,
gonna have to get it from somewhere else. You're gonna have to get that motion from somewhere else. And then you might end up overusing that area where
yeah.
it's not necessarily built to withstand that kind of work, right?
I could
So
just hear some drummer right now saying, "Why would you have something you have to reach behind?" Save it.
right. Yeah. Um, so
That
yeah,
makes sense.
it's
Yeah,
yeah.
flexibility is
So
very important.
yeah, flexibility is very important. And then again, having good strength throughout your whole range of motion is also really important because you can have
Mhm.
all the flexibility in the world. But what we know about how muscles function is that muscles are the strongest kind of in the middle of their range. They're the weakest
Yeah,
when they're the shortest, and they're also the weakest when they're overstretched.
okay.
And so if you're maxing out the amount of tension that you're putting on the muscle, that muscle's already working at a disadvantage, right?
Mhm.
And so making sure that you have good strength to function in that range is going to be really even more important if you do that on a regular basis.
That makes sense.
Uh,
Plus, you've got something in your hand that you're hitting something else with, and vibrations are going through everything too.
Right. And so the other thing too is like the core is not just talking about like your trunk and your back, but the core is the foundation which all the other movements of your body stem from.
Mhm.
So if you actually don't have a strong supportive core, it could kind of by default make you somewhat weaker in
Mm,
your legs, also your arms, because you
interesting.
don't have that foundation. It's like building a house of cards, right? Or
Yeah.
building a house on like a really crappy foundation. You could probably build the house up, but any little jostle or any kind of disturbance in the force
Yeah.
will cause it to kind of work a little bit differently.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. I feel kinda, given the kit I play the most on, that I've been playing for decades, and given the kind of music I do play, I feel really dumb that I don't stretch. Like, even just basic, let me just do some of that. Like, I gotta get with that program. I've always wanted to take yoga, and I've never taken yoga. I need to get it
Yeah.
together finally,
Well, look,
right?
I mean, the thing that I always tell people, because people ask me, "Oh, should I do yoga, Pilates, or whatever?" Like,
Yeah.
and the answer is like most movement is good movement, and so
Yeah,
you
just
just
don't sit like this all day.
yeah, most movement is good movement, and so you just have to find something that is gonna get you out of the positions that you're in the most. So most drummers are sitting, most
Yeah,
computer office workers are sitting, most people in general, students are sitting in front of a
hunched
computer,
over.
texting, hunched
Yeah,
over. If you think about kind of like your average position that you spend during a day, just unfold every segment of that and go the opposite direction. Like that's a really simple, easy way just to think about it.
yeah.
And if that means that you go and take a yoga class where you have someone boss you around or you turn on a YouTube video and follow along,
Well, I have the boss
that
you around part here at home. I just need the yoga
that
part.
that gets you out of those positions, that's a win. It could look like kickboxing. It could look like, I don't know, Krav Maga, or it could look like rock
Yeah.
climbing, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Just as long as you have a diverse set of movements that you're putting yourself through.
Makes sense. Makes sense. How Oh, Steve says, oh, I never knew this. Our producer, Steven, says, I've taken yoga maybe twice. I think one was at some event. Oh, he and I went to in 2013. Wonder what event that. Oh, wow. I don't Steve, elaborate. I don't remember. Did I do the yoga with you? Huh, that's interesting. I don't 2013, what was happening? Well, I started Drunk Talk TV in January of that year. It
Oh,
was a
wow.
busy year. Huh, and I wonder what the event was. Interesting. I I can probably I could probably and everyone's different. I'd love other people's takes too. I know for some people, they don't wanna be bothered, they just wanna do it at home. We
Mhm.
have a home gym where I lift weights. We have an elliptical. We have a stair stepper that also, not a stair stepper, a treadmill that also steps at the
Oh,
same
cool.
time.
Yeah. Mhm.
But there's no room in there to do yoga. There's plenty of room right outside my office. There's a very big room, 30 by 15 feet, where I could do yoga. But I feel like I do need someone to boss me. I need some instruction. And watching a
Yeah.
video, I'm afraid like unless I pay for it and I dedicate where I gotta get up and go do it, I'll blow it off and
Yep.
and
Yep.
yeah, it's just one of those things. It's different from that other stuff for some reason. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, people are motivated through different ways. Like, I'm a very externally motivated person. Like, I have to
Mhm.
have a deadline. I have to have someone telling me what to do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would rather just like sit on the couch and do nothing. So for me, classes are effective. It doesn't matter. You don't have to spend a lot of money in order to do something,
Yeah,
especially some of these like more accessible modalities. I mean, the internet's such a powerful tool these days. Like
it
you can
is.
pretty much find anything.
Yeah.
Um, Whether it's good or not, that's a different issue. But um,
Right, right. Oh, Steve says, all I remember was in Las Vegas. Huh. I wish Angela would walk by so I could ask her real quick. I think I know where it was. If it was sort of up the street from our house, it might have been at one of Venge's Mind, Body, Soul events, I'm thinking. But anyhow, okay, interesting. I've been wanting to join CrossFit as well, but okay, I don't want to sound like a pansy, but I don't want the crap kicked out of me every day. I don't want to you know what I mean? I'm at the
yeah,
point where I want to be in shape. I'm in shape, but I want to get, even more in shape. And I know the benefits of CrossFit. My doctor has said it'll really bring your diabetic numbers down just by doing
sure,
that. So
sure,
I try to, I take the dogs to the dog park a few times a week. I walk 2 miles.
yeah,
I go outside with them in our yard and I play. And then I got the stuff, the gym's next to my office conveniently. And I
yeah,
do my best to mix it up. But sometimes you know how it is, and everybody can probably relate. You just get, especially if they have an office job, you get in a zone and you get in a grind. All of a sudden, 4 hours later, I haven't had anything to drink, gone to the bathroom, or stretched. I've just been
yeah.
like so in it, and you got to be careful of that because that's when if you're too sedentary, you can get. It's funny, you can get hurt from not moving enough.
Right, right. Well, I just your body adapts to how you use it is
Yeah,
kind of what I tell people. So like
for
if
better or
you
worse, right?
For better or for worse, like, your body doesn't know any different. It's an
Yeah,
amazing machine, but it's like, okay, I sit for, I don't know, let's just say I sit for 9 hours a day, at work, and then I go home and I sit on the couch some more, right?
right.
I don't, but your body will be like, "Oh, well, so that means that my legs don't need to be straight, like, I could be a little bit more folded at the hips.
Mhm.
My chest can be a little bit more tight because 'cause I'm not having to, like, open back out again, etcetera."
Yeah,
So it will learn how to function in that context because you're not challenging your body outside of that.
right. That
So it'll get
becomes its
really
norm.
efficient.
Yeah.
in that kind of your typical posture.
Interesting. And for those who don't know, Janice is in the Los Angeles area. Where's your office in case people wanted to come to you with
I'm in
ailments?
the heart of LA. I'm downtown, right next to the Staples Center, or I guess they call
Oh,
it
that's right.
crypto.com arena now, but the Staples Center is what I'll
What's it
always
called
call it.
now?
It's called the crypto.com arena.
Oh, I didn't know that. I remember when they built that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and
Crazy.
I'm, like, literally 3 blocks from there, so,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Cool.
Um,
And how can they get a hold of you?
they can reach out to me, they can, email me, at janice@opuspt.com, or find me online at opuspt.com, or on Instagram, it's opus_pt.
Very cool. And for those who don't know, she's also the drummer of an emo dark metal band
That's
called
right,
Spine Me. No, it's called Bulged Disc. No, that's the name of your first album, right?
that's right. Slip disc.
Slip Disc. Oh, that'd be a great cover band of Slipknot, tribute to
Yeah, right?
Slipknot. Slip Disc. I love it. That's a good one. Cool. Janice, thanks. I'm glad we finally got a chance to really kind of focus on the core and
Yeah,
tell
for
people.
sure.
And I am inspired to stretch. I really am.
Good.
I
I think
want to.
that's something that gets overlooked a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of people do core strengthening, which is great. I'm not angry about that, but I think it's also important to make sure that you're hitting all the bases,
The whole package
the
of
whole
wellness.
package.
Yeah.
That's right.
Great. Thanks, everybody,
Yeah.
for following what we do and joining Janice Ying and myself, Dan Shinder, here on Drumming Injury Talk. We'll be back next month for more. Watch for that. Hope you'll join us, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.